passing the night, a sleeping sea beneath the low-hanging moon, and a blanket of stars, prying heroes from an ill-fated crew. But it's nothing personal.
I'm Jay. I think the only people I haven't met right here, is it Daniel? Yeah. And who else? Sorry, I'm calling you out because Malcolm? Ella. Nice to meet you. Are you guys all M1s? Cool. All right. Well, welcome. So, yeah, I figure I just riff on kind of my story about when I started doing music. And for me, music and medicine kind of came into my head at the same time. And I feel like they've been inseparable in some ways since. So when I was 13, 14, my dad had a lot of health issues. He had a long history of drug use, and so he had Hep C that basically gotten out of control. He had real severe cirrhosis and all these complications. I was also in middle school, which middle school is just the worst. And so around this time, I went through a couple depressive episodes of real clinical depression. And unfortunately, I haven't had those since, but I kind of spent a lot of my story with music and medicine has been trying to untangle that part of my life. And so around that time, two things really significant happened that kind of cued me into maybe the importance of music and medicine and their joined healing powers. So the first thing, my dad, you probably learned, or you will, M1s, and we learned it last year about the Hep C treatments that are available now. Those were being developed when I was a kid. And so Mayo Clinic had a trial that my dad was actually part of. He was part of one of the trials for the drugs that didn't work that well. Well, it did. It cured the Hep C. So my dad was one of the first to be cured of Hep C, which is amazing. Which Hep C you tend to get from, the classic case is a dirty drug needle or something like that. So he was one of the first people to be cured of it, which was amazing. But he was in this clinical trial where he lost all of his teeth. His skin turned bright red. He had all these strange reactions that to this day, I don't know if they've been explained, but it was horrific. But also, he was one of the first people cured. So it was amazing. And as a middle schooler, I thought, wow, medicine's something like medicine. It seemed like such a. It felt like a bus that you can't be stopped. It just cured a disease that I thought was incurable. And so that was really powerful. I thought, maybe there's something meaningful to do in life with medicine. So that was one thing. And the other thing was that throughout my kind of depressive episodes, I really got into music. And I'd always liked music, but I really got into music, where I'd listen, especially my own episodes that tend to be at night, it would just get, it felt unbearable. And I would listen to songs, the same songs like mantras, just again and again and again, almost obsessively. But that was a really important piece for me. It was like a stability thing. And even coming out of those depressive episodes, I found that music, my love of music stayed. And so I learned guitar. During that time, I learned guitar, and I had a terrible guitar that was my dad's that he never played. And my fingers would bleed when I played it because it wasn't even supposed to be played. The strings were so far off the frets, but I was so stubborn that I just kept going. And I learned how to play a G chord on that guitar. And if you can play a G chord on that guitar, you can play a G chord on any guitar because it was the worst guitar in the world. So from there, I just kind of didn't stop. I played music at my church growing up quite a bit. So my own faith and spirituality got kind of woven into my love of music, which kind of made the love that much, deeper and part of my identity. And then when I got to college, I kind of kept the pre-med thing open. I wasn't in a typical pre-med major, but I took the classes, and I was kind of horrified by some of the pre-med culture. No offense to any of us, but, it's just, there's a lot of neuroticism in medicine that, isn't going anywhere, it seems like. And I started to really question, why do I want to do this? Is this worth it? And during that time, I was in a band at school, but I also would play like pubs or cafes and things like that. And I started to take my songwriting more seriously. And I went to Nashville during college for a summer and recorded an EP that I studied abroad in the UK. And so I wrote these songs for like the UK pub circuit. Has anyone been to like a UK pub with live music? Yeah? Okay. So you kind of know what I'm talking about there. Especially the songwriter scene there is awesome because you can just wander into a pub lots of times and they have these open mics that people get pretty into. So I would, after class, I'd play probably 3 or 4 open mics a week over there and get free drinks. And usually people were receptive or they'd talk over you, but that's okay. And so I kind of cut my teeth in my own songwriting in college. And then after college, throughout college, there was that perpetual question of, am I going to go to medical school? Do I still want to do that? And I felt kind of disillusioned about it. But I did, there was a kind of a number of books I read that were mostly by psychiatrists that I found super meaningful. And I thought, wow, maybe this part of medicine, maybe I fit here in medicine, if I fit at all. But I wasn't sure. And so after college, I was fortunate I got actually a grant through our college, which is super lucky and privileged to get to do that, where they paid for, like through this grant, I got to pay for an album, moved to Nashville, so I didn't have to worry about paying bills for the first 8 months or so I was in Nashville. And so this was 2018. I was in Nashville for about 2 years, just doing songwriting full time. And what that means is once my grant money ran out, I was, very, broke. I don't know how else to say it. I would figure out whatever way I could to kind of pay rent and then would play shows as much as I could. So I was always driving wherever I could play a show. So for a couple of years, I would play, I played hundreds of shows, but they were all over the place, which isn't ideal. You'd like to have just, in your backyard, you go to a venue, 500 people listen, and then you go home. That would be the best, but that's not how it works in the arts lots of times. And so I kind of built an email list at first. So I put my music on Spotify, which is, still kind of a newer technology. Like, it's, we all know it, but like our grandparents' generation and stuff, they're still latching onto CDs. So it's a cool technology that I could put my music anywhere, and anyone could put their music on Spotify, by the way, if you're an artist. A monkey could do it. So don't be impressed by people who have their music on Spotify unless they're good. No, but I started doing that, and through that, people started to find my music randomly. You think about playlists you listen to when you make coffee or, go to the gym or whatever. So I kind of fit this niche of like folk songwriting. And I realized I could probably start playing for people, who actually wanted to hear the music instead of just getting in front of people who didn't want to hear it or weren't familiar with it, like a typical bar gig. So I built an email list and social media and started doing house show calls where people would write in if they wanted to host me in their house, and I would bring my guitar. At the time I was single, so I was just driving. Like I would drive for I did one that was like 2 months where I just kind of did a zigzag around the country to all these living rooms. And I would go and I would tell stories and sing these songs. And throughout that time, the med connection, I know I've talked a lot about music, the medicine connection that was going on. In college, at the beginning of college, I had been connected with hospice as a hospice volunteer. My grandma had she had died around the time I heard about this program. I thought, that would be a really interesting way to see this side of life and maybe, have something to offer. And so for about 5 years, I was a hospice volunteer. So most of college and then afterwards. And my own songwriting, it wasn't super intentional at first. It just kind of happened. My songwriting started to draw on these like clinical experiences where I just sit with people and talk to them and hear their stories. And so a lot of my songs are inspired from that world, even if they don't. I'll play one today that's very direct, but most of my songs are very kind of abstract about it. They're more on the, dare I say, like poetic end, where it's not talking about, young man with hypertension walking in, but, something about his story or something I found inspiring. So I started to do that, and then COVID happened, and we remember COVID. So I'd been doing music for about 2 years. I moved back to Phoenix. Tori, I married my wife. We were dating at the time, and she was there, and my family's there. So went back to Phoenix, and kind of was spinning about, okay, what do I want to do? Because like the music, there were many things I learned about the music industry I just didn't like, and some of it's particular to the Nashville scene, which is mostly like country or Christian music. And if you don't fit in those categories, you kind of carve your own path, which is doable, but. I found a lot of my artist friends, they were spending so much time trying to pay bills anyway that it wasn't, the music life that I kind of envisioned wasn't panning out. And I think, a different story if you have a huge audience and, all that. But for me, it was basically chasing down house shows. And I thought, I have other loves. So I want to explore this psychiatry thing. So I applied to med school, and I'm here now, which is great. And so that was kind of that year of COVID. I was applying and coming here and working on a new album. And then I thought, and I'll wrap up. How are we doing on time? Am I talking too much? We're good? Okay. I'll wrap up with coming to med school. So I had these kind of this vision of, okay, I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing. I'm going to learn about people and just write what I find inspiring. And I'm not going to have to be tethered to what I think is commercially viable or whatever, because I'm doing this just because I love it, which is why I started doing it and what I want to keep doing. And so I got here, and last year was hard. Like what was hard was the sense of identity tailspin that I wasn't expecting, with the sense of, I've heard this from both industries. So music industry, which is very much an industry, and medicine industry, which is very much an industry. Musicians say all the time, they say, only do music if you can't see yourself doing anything else. Great, okay. And then medical people, they say, only do medicine if you can't see yourself doing anything else. Okay, so there's a paradox, because if you only see yourself doing both those things, neither really invites you to participate, right? And I'm not blaming anyone for that. I think it's just culturally, they're both demanding things, so that's just what it is. So last year I had a lot of anxiety about, am I going to be able to do this? Is it going to take away too much time? Even though I was playing shows, and I think giving it a good go, I felt like satisfied in my creative enterprise. And I thought I'd just say briefly kind of how I did that. For me, first year, and I've done it second year, and I plan to do it in clerkships. And a lot of people tell me it's not possible, but they told me that about first year, and I did it. So we'll see. I'll stop if I have to. My creative practice is very much, it's pretty disciplined in the sense of I get up about the same time, and before I touch anything to do with medical school, for the first hour, I just write. And when I say write, I mean I open up my journal, I'll write a little bit, I'll play some chords on my little keyboard, I'll pick up my guitar, learn something I'm interested in. I basically just play for an hour. And I don't let myself do anything until I've played for an hour of just whatever. And I did that last year, and I'm doing it still. And over just playing, like it wasn't like this terrible process. I mean, some days were harder than others. Just doing that and giving a little bit each day, I wrote about 50 songs, and I recorded 10 of them this summer in Seattle with a producer who's produced a lot of albums that I just love. So that was a lot of fun. And so this summer, then I planned out my next house show tour. I did Tori and I and our dog Lola in our Prius, which is not a standard touring van. We did about 30 states, around 30 shows. So it was like a show a state, which is just kind of how it worked out, because people from those places wanted to have us. And it was great. It was financially viable. We made a lot of money and we were able to pay for the record. I felt satisfied musically, and so much so that by the end of the tour, I was like, God, I want to be home. And now I'm in school again. And I'm playing gigs on weekends and writing in the morning still. And my plan, I know clerkship year is a different beast, but I'm still going to wake up and do what I've been doing is my plan. And so I guess I'll just say before I play the song, whatever you are creatively inspired by, I know whether it's our articulate voice or not, it seems like there's a pressure that it's not important. It's play. There's work, and your work, you save lives, or you're going to save lives, so work. And then you could play afterwards when you're older. I just think that's bullshit. I don't think that's true. So I think if you can build play into your life now, as someone who is doing it, and I'm not saying I'm a success story at all, I'm just doing it, and I love it, and it makes the whole med school thing a lot better, I think, for me personally. That's been my joy in med school. So with that, I'm going to play just a song that kind of kicked off the whole hospice music medicine connection for me. In a nutshell, this was a person I met, one of the first people I was paired with in hospice, and I just saw her every week. And you do that. Usually hospice is supposed to be 6 months. I saw her for like 2 years. And so when you do that, when you see someone every week for 2 years, you become pretty good friends. And so I got to know a lot of her story, where she was from. Don't worry, this is HIPAA safe or compliant or whatever. But she was from southern India, and she lived in Europe for a long time. And then when her spouse passed, she came to America, which is where I met her. And she had all these interesting hobbies and passions. She loved she was a translator. She was a teacher, but also a translator. She'd translate like old fables into English. And then she also knew everything about the royal family, like everything. So we talk about the royal family all the time. And then the third thing, she loved gardening. And wherever she was in the world, whatever country, whatever city, she always had a garden. And in hospice, in this particular facility, she couldn't have that garden. And that was actually one, strangely, you know, you think when you're dying, for her, that was one of the hardest pieces, was not being able to garden and have that love with her, which, you know, I thought of my own love of music and what it'd be like to be without that. And so I wrote this song called Garden for her. And I'll just leave with the last time I saw her. I didn't know it was going to be the last time I saw her, but I told her, hey, I'm going to Nashville next week to record this song I wrote for you. And I hadn't played her the song. It's kind of a sad song, and I was waiting for the right moment. And she was really quiet. Usually she was talkative, but she was really quiet, and she just held my hand, and I held her hand, and then she started crying, and I started crying. I just felt tremendously moved. But I thought, you know, I'd see her for 2 years. I thought this was normal. You know, normal in the sense I'm going to see her next week. So the next week, the morning I was in Nashville recording this song, I got an email that she died that morning, which made the song that much more meaningful to me. So I didn't get to play it for her, but I did play it for her family, and I met them all at the funeral, which was a beautiful experience. And then I continue to play the song today for her and kind of for the love of music and medicine. So the song's called Garden. Actually, I'm going to use the other mic. I think it might work better. No. I'm going to do this one. I don't like the cage. Okay. You won't be able to hear the guitar that well, but that's okay. It takes a couple seconds for her to shake off the medicine, a couple seconds more to know it's me. It takes a couple minutes till we're right back in it, right where we left off the other week. Her body is a frame with the skin all stretched and stained, and a faded crown of gray caught in her hair. She should be on a throne, not in this God-forsaken home, and where they dope her up to keep her pushing air. But she says, I'm not scared to die. I'll look my maker in the eye, and in his gaze I hope that I find peace. But now that this ship comes in, I've just one prayer left on my lips. Lord, take me kindly if you please. Takes a couple hours, for she's tired of your flowers. They remind her of the garden that she can't grow. For it's freedom she's missing, just to make her own decisions. Keep living how she's living till she goes. Her body is a frame with the skin all stretched and stained, and she wears that crown of gray just like a queen. She should be on a throne, not in this God-forsaken home, where the medicine's becoming the disease. But she says, I'm not scared to die. I'm scared that I might lose my mind, end up like the woman down the hall. How she cried when her time had come. God knows she's not the only one. So Lord, take me kindly when you call. And I am standing in her garden, and and it is easy to forget that there is bound to be a harvest, and the season will end. But she says, don't be scared to die. I'll tell you now, you'll lose that fight. Just let it be a lamp to help you see all the time that we have today. And when we're old, we'll learn to pray, Lord, take me kindly if you please. Lord, take her kindly from me.